Most events are forgettable, not because the people running them don't care, but because they're optimizing for logistics instead of memory. I'm Jay Menashe, Senior Director of Strategy and Growth at Exhibitus, and this is Event Experience Experts. Every episode, I sit down with the creatives, strategists, and senior leaders who are raising the bar on what live brand experiences can actually do. If you're done accepting forgettable, you're in the right place. My guest today spent time on the main stage of the Future Hospitality Summit in Riyadh, telling a room full of hospitality investors and developers that the building is only the beginning. That what actually creates loyalty and memory is how a space gets activated, not how much marble is in the lobby. He's the founder of House of Attention, a creative studio that spent over a decade designing experiences that show up as moments, not amenities. Before that, he built an event company that once served a formal dinner on a moving subway car. I'm completely fascinated with the work you're doing, and I loved our conversation last week, so I'm especially excited to welcome Michael Cirino to the pod.
Pleasure to meet you, Jay. Thank you so much for having me. And I think we as experienced designers are really having kind of a moment right now with this whole AIification of everything, digitification, however you want to slice it up. But the realness that we bring on a regular basis, the thing that we try to problem solve for all the time, the outrageousness of theater without a net, so to speak, or without rehearsals, that we tread in on a regular basis is becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming the driving force for how people do their large capital investment, their real estate design, but also it's how storytelling and it's how global cultures are moving now, right? We just had the World Cup, which is the biggest party you could possibly throw in the world at the moment. And it's interesting to see how communities responded, reacted, what kind of experience they designed around that center of gravity to amplify it and to bring their culture to life as the thing happens, whether it was Kansas City or Mexico City. It doesn't matter. Each one of them had to do their own thing to say, this is how we're going to welcome people into our world and give them the experience that's as true as to our hearts. And I appreciate that we do it in all sorts of different levels. So thanks for having me here and to talk about this process.
Yeah, well, and I love the World Cup, talking about that specifically, just because, the comparison here, it's like, oh, we just invited all our cousins over, and it's how we welcome them. You said it perfectly. It's like, to see their fascination with ranch dressing in Costco and Walmart and Buc-ee's. I was like, I could watch that, like, injected in my veins. I just thought it was so funny. It's like, wow, America, ranch dressing. Let's go.
100%. I mean, I'm a blue cheese guy because I'm from the East Coast. My wife is a ranch person because she's from the Midwest. But listen, sour cream based dipping sauces are fantastic. I'm glad other people are recognizing it. I think what was really funny inside this whole mix, my family and I ended up watching a cooking show where it was like a pizza competition with a bunch of different like pizzaiolas, right? And there were some young guys that did crazy pizza with a bunch of crazy toppings on it, like buffalo chicken and all that stuff. And then there was just like an old Italian guy that was like, I've been making Neapolitan style pizza for 80 years like this. And they had to use special ingredients in one of the contests, and he got the ranch dressing, and you could just see all the other pizzaiolas were like, this is going to be easy. I would totally put this on the pizza. I could do it. And he was just like, this is not fucking happening. There's absolutely no way I'm going to put this. And he ended up putting like truffles in it. And then at the end of the day, all of the people were like, this was absolutely delicious. Did you try it? And he was like, I refuse.
Yeah.
So he went the whole contest, made something delicious, served it to the guests, and they were like, "This is great." He's like, "Cool, never gonna eat that in my entire life. I hope you have a good rest of your day."
I love that. Well, you also just taught me something already. I didn't realize that blue cheese versus ranch was like an East Coast versus Midwest. I knew ranch like West Coast. I lived in LA. They're like, "Yeah, let's dip our pizza in ranch." I'm like, "That's because your pizza is trash," but that's a whole other.
I mean, like, listen. I think we've established that pizza does not have to be bad to be better with ranch dressing or something dipped in it, but blue cheese just happens to be what people associate with wings on the East Coast.
Yes.
Mostly Massachusetts, New York, the Mid-Atlantic. From my experience, I'm not a food icon or historian or somebody who's done deep research on this. So please, if anybody actually does know where that line break is, I'm sure Buffalo though is going to be it's the least past Buffalo, right? Buffalo's firmly in the blue cheese category, but I'm sure that they're happy to do both.
Yeah, listen, you're. I'm going to call you the expert now. You are the man. You have made this decision. We are the the blue cheese capital of the world is on the east. So, all right, we'll flag in the sand.
I appreciate it. And there we go. Another flag in my hat as well. Definitively. I find though that these questions of like culture and how culture attaches to experience design, especially around the World Cup, but around any of these experiences, any kind of journey, and I think I've been doing experiential design for brands and for meetings, incentives, and all sorts of corporate events. The, the energy around it is all starting to feel the same, though, right? Trade show booths to me are now the center of gravity in a whole campaign that you have to run around the trade show. You can't just sponsor the booth and expect the leads to get there. We were just in Saudi Arabia, like you were talking about, at a conference that I'd never been to, that I'd never spoken at before. But the stage presentation that I was giving, to make it feel as impactful as we wanted it to, we engaged people in 7 different ways. Like, we hosted a podcast for weeks beforehand, did a podcast on site, built a listening room, activated the food and beverage in unique ways, did a cultural safari off-site so that we could both see the city and the things that we wanted to see, but also invite the guests that live there to give us their perspectives and views on what was going on. So again, it was richer in cultural experiences. And again, I think I'm not the exception, or maybe I'm still the exception, but I shouldn't be the exception anymore. That kind of proactivity towards experience design, if you're going to make the kind of investment that it takes to bring your team to a physical place, to build a booth, to do the dryage, whatever, to put things on the ceiling and have them take it out of the boxes and all the nonsense, right? There's a lot of weight to carry there, and KPIs don't come through gift, business cards in a fishbowl, or the number of views that your booth got on social media, or that your pop-up got. You really have to think about it in a more holistic storytelling component towards your global brand and your global messaging.
Yeah, and bringing up the Future Hospitality Summit, that's where I'll tell you now, most of my questions are around that content. I couldn't get enough of looking at your LinkedIn posts, and I'm gonna, basically I have a long flight coming up, or multiple flights coming up. I got podcasts to listen to, and I appreciate you for that. So let me bring it back. Like, one of the things you argued at your session was that we stopped collecting luxury goods and we've started collecting moments. The building is really only the beginning. I mean, that's a pretty bold claim in a room full of people that, I'll say it spent 9 figures. It could even be more than that on building. What was the pushback? What's the pushback you get most often? And I'll even add, like, where do you think it's wrong?
So I would say the pushback isn't exactly that what I'm saying is wrong. I think there is a understanding on a kind of like a global level for this, that experience design is the thing that makes a place feel lived in. I think the difference is that different parts of the world and different types of investors, I would even say in New York here, we saw the same kind of thing happen with the Hudson Yards project. They have a real, if you build it, they will come kind of energy. And I think that is possible in certain places. It's possible with certain IP, certain brands attached to it, whether they be hospitality specific brands or retail or F&B. But that globalization of if you build it, they will come, and the brands that people feel are acceptable for putting in those if you build it places they're not sustaining that anymore, right? The best restaurants in New York that now have 30 locations don't feel unique and interesting anymore. They don't have the same charm and magic that they did in the first one in East Village. Now, 17 copies later. And I say part of that is because it's really hard to keep the staff excited, get them at the same level of performance. And I think a lot of what we take for granted in the experiential world is that, it's really on the shoulders of our team to deliver the kind of quality experience that we imagine in spreadsheets and then try to deliver to the client in decks. And if that team is doing anything, it's improv comedy or improv theatrical performances on a regular basis. And if they don't have good props and a good set and good training, the ability to say yes and to each other, they're going to start to fail, and they're going to feel that failure, and they're going to get bummed out. The guests are going to get bummed out. And again, that's something that we as experience designers can work with, can build better versions of, so that that support structure happens from the ground up. And I think when you're building a brand new building somewhere that doesn't have a lot of buildings around it, it's even that much more important to say, what are we doing here to connect this to the world that is outside of the building? I typically say, you can't open your windows to let the air conditioning blow out. You have to have the windows open so that the air can flow through and move in and out, right? And I think that is one of those things that they might not say if they're a developer that they do, but it's something that they recognize the industry is doing, and that if a solution was possible, the return on investment would be higher. And I think that same kind of conversation is happening in any trade show when the real estate is that 20 by 20 or whatever the F it is. You know what I mean? Like, however you slice that up, I'm putting in a huge amount of money in here. It might not be 9 figures, but if it's 6 figures, that's still a significant investment to time, human capital, and resources. And what are we doing to integrate ourselves with the people around us in the community that we're in, to plant seeds, to not just be an interloper here looking for marketing value, but to be somebody who is consistently providing value and expanding the oculus of what's possible for the conversations we're starting.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot to dig into there. I mean, I think one thing you said was like build it and they will come. That's such an old school mentality at this point, and whether it's an event or trade show or a physical building, you have to create some momentum around it. There have to be an integrated marketing push to get people to come to your space, to come people get them to experience it. I think that people need to lean into that more. We talk about it all the time, the pre, at, post. It's like, but it's not just for events. It's for building that community. I love that. I won't dig into all these other things, but I have many questions, so I'm gonna keep on going.
Appreciate it, Jay.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I think you have a really interesting perspective. I think we agree on a lot of things, but I also like you just think differently than a lot of people, which I appreciate especially. So one of the conversations happening was about the shift from building developments to building those communities, something walkable, integrated neighborhood where people really know each other, and it's not just like a tower with amenities. I said it before, it's like it's not just about the marble. What does that same idea look like inside a single activation or event where it's not building a development or a community? It's just like 3-4 days.
I mean, again, I think that the space that I think about experience design. Sorry, the space that I think about experience design starts pre-decision to post-experience. A lot of what we do, I would say 70% of what we do is on site, right? It is the theater, it is the set, it's the fabrication, it's the staffing. But the other 30% is, how do I get your attention to want to come to this thing? How do I get my team's attention to be present and focused? How do we understand what the KPIs and the deliverables are, so that as we start to deploy these resources, time, energy, money, that the feedback loop starts to create a center of gravity that pulls us towards the success and creates tension that allows the only resolution to be the path of least resistance to success, right? And there's a lot of different ways to think around that, but like I again, don't think of the monophonicness of the experience design. I think about, how do I take this platform that I'm building, create as many different conversations from this platform, validation points from this platform, not just how many leads can I capture, right? Because I was in a country I really have never been into in a professional way, on a stage I'd never been in, and I didn't think that just spending money to sponsor the event or be a speaker, they asked me to speak, right? Like those two things are options, right? And you get value from sponsorship, you get value from the trade show booth, but what we did was not a traditional booth structure. It was not a traditional like, well, he's on stage and you come over here and let's get some business cards. It was about describing what we were doing before we got there and giving people the reason to seek us out, to ask for our consulting advice, or to be able to invest in our businesses. And I think that is part of what we should be thinking about when we make any of these moments, right? How does the ephemeral moment lead towards infinite media, and how does that infinite media validate us so that those finite moments are more impactful and have a clarity of purpose, if that makes sense?
No, it does. And what you did, instead of it being a moment in time and having that just speaking opportunity, you were able to create it in moments over time. And you did the pre-show. You're having it. You're building that anticipation, getting people interested to even hear you speak in the first place, and then having that thread afterwards. That red thread connecting it all. So it's not like, hey, I just following up email. Like if I see. I can't hit delete fast enough when it's like, hey, hope you're well, just wanted to follow up. You have something to talk about and to connect it back to that experience. And I think, again, going back to that, like, there are 3 chapters of the book, and you got to activate all of them to create that, that community feeling, whether, again, building a development, building community, or building an event. One area I love focusing on is unreasonable hospitality. I don't know, have you read that book?
100%. Will's a friend. I think when I did the L Train dinner, it was right in the core heart of the unreasonable hospitality time at 11 Madison Park. And I remember going in for a pre-shift meal and talking about the project with the team and about our motivations and why. And, not to be too specific, but it was a 6-course meal of really fancy food on the subway. There were 12 guests, and it took 84 people to serve them lunch. And because it was in a public space, and because I'm an event producer who's used to having permits and insurance and all sorts of things when I do anything, right? And I couldn't get any of that stuff for that experience because of the way the space was designed. I just wanted to make sure we were up to code. So besides those 84 people, I had a lawyer with me on the train. I had the MTA code of conduct. Again, like, I try to play according to the rules of society in a way that is dynamic and focused so that the people know that they're allowed to relax and be present in that experience design. And it was really great to talk about it with him because he was doing that same thing on site. He was giving his team permission to take their expectations and blow it out of the water, even if it is in tiny ways. And I was trying to do it in large and dynamic ways, right? Because I didn't have a restaurant that needed to do the same thing over and over again 500 times a day, right? So I had the freedom of being wildly outside of the box as my foundation, instead of making sure that, you know, all 18 courses get served and they're all flawless all the time. And I think that balance of the permanence that you know, he exemplifies in Unreasonable Hospitality in 11 Madison Park, and that vision of how can I treat this customer journey differently. You know, that was the foundation I started from when I was doing those events, just for the core purpose of it, right? And I think that when I was a little kid and the Michelin guidebook meant more, right? I always understood that 3 Michelin stars wasn't just about how good the food was, or wasn't that it was fancy, but it was something that was worth a journey. And I always imagine that the experience that I design are worth a journey, right? If I'm going to do something in Las Vegas, you should get on a plane. You should come to Las Vegas because I'm an amazing experience designer and I don't do things in a mediocre way. And if this thing fits inside your passion point, whether it be an activation, a trade show booth, a conversation that's happening on stage, it's going to deliver because that is the thing that I know that I have to do to be me. Right. And I think that idea was lost somewhere in the ways when we were trying to imagine, you know, how to define fanciness. But that idea of driving people to want to have an adventure, I think, is one of the core operating functions of us as experience designers. And I would love to have it be a better said metric, but it's definitely something that I think about every single time. Would somebody feel that they made a memory or feel valuable with this trip if they came all the way across the world to see me and or participate or play or whatever the thing is?
Yeah, I think what impressed me most, and you know, there's so many things in that book that I lean into, but it's like they have literally a couple of hours to figure out like what is this thing that we can do to make this such a special memory and moment. And it's like we have months, and some cases years, to like, hey, we know these people so well, we can collect all this data. And it's just often it's overlooked, and it's not even a budget thing. Like, you know, I always lean back to that, like the hot dog story. It's like, what did that cost them? $1.50 and 10 minutes of time in the kitchen to make it the most memorable story. They probably came out of every Michelin, you know, experience they had in the city that trip they had. And yeah, I mean, I think you said it, like going to Vegas, like let's be in this moment and let's create something real and memorable and impactful. And those aren't always things you can measure on a spreadsheet and say, hey, look at the ROI we got from doing this thing. But it's like, yeah, but that they will remember you in that moment and how they felt, and that is where will come back in ROI. And maybe even not directly, which is fine, but I guarantee it's like you built that trust and you built that relationship through those actions, and that's where it really, you know, levels up.
And again, I think one of the things that I'm trying to figure out better language and conversation around as experiential becomes blurred with hospitality and tourism and meetings, incentives, and corporate events, right? The blurriness of all this stuff is really interesting because the KPIs get even blurrier. And I think one of the things that we really have to figure out as a industry is how to talk about this as capital B brand investments. Capital B brand investments are the value of the Coca-Cola logo, the value of the Nike swoosh, the value of the energy that those things exemplify and how it becomes a part of our place. It's not about how many views or likes we got on social media. It's not about how many people took pictures at our photo booth or our step and repeat or if our hashtag is trending, because none of those things are actually indicative of a good experience design, a thoughtful memory that was delivered with unreasonable hospitality, or something that will actually move the needle in any of the other KPIs. If you have outrageousness, you might get some of them, but that's just eating candy. It's not giving you nourishment. And I think we as a group have to stop fetishizing these things that are really beyond our control and also not valuable in the same way that buying banner ads is valuable. Like, you can get clear KPIs from banner ads. How many people clicked on it? How far down the funnel did they get? What is blocking them from the funnel? That's really, sure, part of our value is doing that, but a lot of our value is just propping up all those other conversations, whether it be for marketing, entertainment, communication, to say we're safe. You know, we're here. We're doing the thing. If you got to hire a SaaS platform, we're here and we're listening to you, and you can trust us because we're here with all the other SaaS platforms. And if we weren't here, maybe you wouldn't trust us as much, unless we came up with a good reason why we weren't here and gave you the same kind of validation through other types of experiences, whether they be online or IRL. And I think that's kind of where my brain always gets to. And I think that's also what makes this stuff unreasonable, right? Because it's not about the Instagram moment. It's about the memory making and how that memory then connects to the brand that delivered that memory. Again, we all, a good friend of mine named David Title always says, no matter what the client asks for, what they really want is a photo booth. And I think that is an oversimplification. What they really want is to be responsible for making a memory. And it's not, memories are not in the photo booth, right? They're not in the Instagram. They're not in the number of leads you got on your lead magnet, right? You have to holistically look at the thing as a big thing, bigger picture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think, well, the photo reminds you of the memory, and that it's like, hey, you don't need to take a video of fireworks. You need to remember the fireworks. You're literally never going to look at that ever again. But you see, how many people at fireworks shows, like, oh, it's like, I did it back in the day when I first got a digital camera, not to age myself too much, but it's like, ooh, this is so cool. I can actually take a picture and see it in the moment. And it's like, I don't think I've looked at those since 2005 when I bought that digital camera. So yeah, no, I think it's focusing on, yes, what, and getting down to the bones of it. Like, what is that memory you want to create? What are we trying to get in that feeling? So, I'm going to digress a little bit. How are you friends with Will Guidara? I need to know this.
Listen, we have a relationship because of what we do, right? When I did the L train, he invited me to talk at EMP. I had already been a guest at EMP. I knew people that worked at EMP in their media and storytelling place, and we share the same kind of language, right? I think my version is a little bit more outrageous than unreasonable because he's also bound by the rules, or at the time he was bound by the rules of civility, right? He was bound by the rules of the 3 Michelin-starred guide. He was bound by the desire to have the best restaurant in the world. Those are all things that put you into a box of creativity, and unreasonability is definitely something that is acceptable inside that box. You know what I mean? If we look at experiential marketing, like I've blown things up, I've set things on fire, right? I'm not unreasonable, I'm outrageous, right? And there is a different need in our industry to take what is foundationally understood as, can you go outside of your comfort zone as the host to bring your guest outside of their comfort zone so you can make a memory? And I think that's where our connection really came. And as he was building the Nomad and he was creating other opportunities for his brand to start to expand, it was always just fun to check in with him and to see that progress. And I got to hang out with him. I think we were at, it was the special event last February, I think he spoke at, and I happened to be at the event as well. So it was nice to catch up with him there because, as a event speaker, you don't always know the room that you're sitting in and exactly who the people are. And it was his first time in front of DMCs, so I got to speak to him the night before the conversation and explain, these are the people that are going to be in the room tomorrow, and this is what you mean to them. And it was awesome to be able to see him respond and connect organically in that space. Again, he's a consummate professional, and I think it's really awesome to see how he's taking what he did inside restaurants and in hospitality and pulling it to other businesses, because again, as I said, that blurry line the blurry space is getting fuzzier and fuzzier every day. There's no delineations anymore between these different spaces.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I got to meet him at South by in 25, and I think it's the first time I fanboyed over an adult that wasn't an athlete or a movie star, and I saw he was speaking. And have you been to South by before?
Yeah, I 100%.
So that was my only time ever there, and I learned very quickly, if you don't get to one of these big general sessions at least 30 to an hour early, you're just not getting in. And I realized about 10 minutes before his session that he was speaking, so I dropped what I was doing, I sprint over there, I get in 2 minutes before it's there, and I actually got a pretty good seat. And I got to meet him afterwards, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this moment right here. And it's what was especially cool is not only does he write the book about unreasonable, he seems just, and I obviously only had this one experience, just as genuine as it got. You saw him answering questions at the very end, the last 10, 15 minutes, and really just looking the person directly in the eye. And one person got cut off because they had to kick us out of the room. There was another session, and he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then took it outside, then answered another, 15 minutes worth of questions. And it was just that, it's they always say, don't meet your heroes, not, and I won't say Will is a hero, but it's definitely an inspiration. And it was so cool to see. It's like, oh, thank goodness you live up to the message you're putting out there. And I thought that was very cool.
Percent. I think he over delivers in a lot of those ways as both an individual and as a as a speaker and as a thought leader, right? Because the message that he's taking into different boardrooms, into different conversations, is well beyond the kind of things that we think about, right? The lighting design, the tables, the food and beverage, right? It is about how you treat human beings, how you see them, how you listen to them, and it's something we can always do a little bit better every single day, giving that space and giving that availability to the rest of the universe.
And the correlations to our industry, it's like, it's so obvious. The front of house versus back of house conversation is a constant in my world. And it's like, yeah, no, guys, we literally need each other. I don't understand why there's a battle here. You can't do your job if I don't do my job, and I certainly can't do my job if you don't do yours. So it's like, can we just all appreciate we're on the same team here? And that was the biggest message probably in the book, was that, beyond, of course, the unreasonable hospitality moments. There was one thing
you have to, yeah, please.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you have to have that ecosystem, or you're gonna fail, right? We are a team. It's not a family. It's a team. There's different positions. They get handed off. There's responsibilities. When you don't deliver, you have to be responsible to yourself. But when you do deliver and everybody's moving in the same direction, that culture, that excitement, that thing that drives the stuff forward is going to be valuable for everybody. And it's going to keep employees around. It's going to keep staff focused. It's going to allow for the guests to know why they're there and have a better clarity of information. So every time that you can communicate your version of that conversation, that hospitality, you'll get more and more returns and coming back to you, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the quotes I really leaned into that I read, it was, the future of hospitality isn't 5 stars, it's 5 senses. That service level luxury matters less than how that space is making you feel. I know we've already talked about this a little bit. When you're standing in front of one of your own or inside one of your own activations, how do you know that it's landing on a sensory level?
I mean, so I always say that besides the 5 physical senses we have, there's usually 5 things that you need to have at an event for human beings to feel comfortable, safe, and ready to explore whatever the extension is, right? You need to have a set, a place. You need to have a performance. You need to have music. You need to have food and beverage. You need to have bathrooms, right? Those 5 things need to be there so that humans can stay and, again, feel seen, but also feel entertained, feel purpose, feel reason why, right? Any of those 5 things, even the bathroom, which I call a spa, right? Can be the focus of why you're gathering, right? You can go to a concert for the music, you can go to a sports event for a performance, you can go to Broadway for a performance, but you know the other things once you get into that format, right? If we're at Yankee Stadium, or I can't see it yet, if we're at the Ranger, you guys, Madison Square Garden for the Rangers in the background there, I think, right? If I've seen that correctly.
Yeah.
You know what you're going to eat, you know what songs you're going to hear when, you know all of the things that connect, you know what the bathrooms look like, you see all of that stuff in your head before that experience happens, because rituals over time create community around those experiences, right? I also know that as an experience designer, this is maybe inside baseball, we can figure it out. I will sell 50 things. I will plan to do 100. Because I know that I'm only going to be able to execute some version between 50 and 75 of them, and I won't get to choose which of those things gets cut off the map, because it's theater without rehearsals and no safety net. So, hey, turns out that thing didn't show up. Why didn't it show up? FedEx plane got hit by lightning. What do you want me to tell you? It's out of my control. If you want me to do it again tomorrow, it'll get here, but it's not going to be here today. So I instead have these 3 other things that are going to take its place in either the run of show and the set decoration or whatever it is. And that over-preparedness, I think, is one of those things that allows us as the producers to feel comfortable in that space, knowing that we're going to deliver or over-deliver so that we can feel like that risk was well-balanced, right? Because there always is that risk of, oh, shit, it's raining and we're outside and we didn't get a tent, so what are we going to do now?
Mm. God, what a mistake. No tent with it going outside. Yeah, speaking of things that you can't predict, and which is like everything in our world, you can only plan so many variables. But I was talking to a brand once, and I'm like, oh, this is a new booth. When did you guys decide? She's like, we didn't make that decision. Our truck shipping the booth here lit on fire, or caught fire on the way here, and we had to scramble like 2 days prior to just get anything. And I'm like, well, this is really impressive considering I just learned your booth was actually on fire. Man, yeah. Yeah, you just got to do. Well, I think one thing you keep saying is like, we don't get rehearsals. I mean, you never think about it that way. You're right. Like, once it starts, it starts. Like there's no turning back. It's just full speed ahead. We're going 0 to 60, and when it's over, it's over. And we can talk about right and wrong and what can we do different next year. But it's like, we always plan for. I like that, 50 to 100 things that we're planning for. Yes, we want to get them all done. The reality is things happen, people happen. There's so many things that can get in our way that are literally human behavior. It's just unpredictable in so many ways. I like that framing.
Yep, and I think again, right, like the ability to respond and react is what experiential producers do, right? Like I know that there's people that produce TV commercials that have a hard time, but they're in a fucking set and they get to edit and they get to change the lighting and do it a second time. They get to know ahead of time what the writers are for the talent that's coming in the room, right? Like a lot of the things that we deal with are last minute changes, reprioritizations, somebody up the creative chain saying things that aren't physically possible or against local labor laws. And I think that those things are interesting, but because we are experienced designers and because we're used to trying to get it done, even if the truck gets set on fire, the place that we find ourselves in is how do we solve this problem as efficiently as possible with as much impact regularly that we can deliver, right, as regularly as we can. And I think that breeds a specific type of producer. It allows for different types of spreadsheets to be made with different weird things written in the spreadsheet and different weirdos checking off the spreadsheet boxes. Do you know what I mean? And I think because of that, it gives us a different flexibility and understanding where our creative bucket is that we get to paint from, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hope people don't freak out in that moment. It's like, hey, you can freak out. Could you just save it for like an hour from now when we fix this problem? There's no sense in freaking out in those moments. So, yeah. So there was another frame I really liked. You talked about like hardware and software, which is I was like when I read that I'm like, what? What do you mean hardware and software in the event world? But you were talking about like the buildings are world class. That's the hardware, and the real work left is the software. That cultural programming, the sensory design that activates the space. You know, pair that with another idea from the summit that comfort itself has become a commodity you can buy, with literally a tap on the screen. So where are event and hospitality budgets still getting spent on hardware and comfort when the real return is in the software and the risk? What that line item everyone's afraid to fight for or cross off without thought.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I think that a lot of people love, and I know that we're talking about, not just about set design and specifically set fabrication for trade show booths, but like I feel like a lot of people overspend on the set without spending on the actual value conversation proposition, the theater that's happening inside the set, or even more so they spend on site when their spend should happen before, during, and after. Or yes, yes, we have a booth, it's 101, but also we're hosting the opening night party off-site at this nightclub if you want to come to here. Or you know what, we're not at the booth, we took over this coffee shop right across the street and we're running a co-working space there all day. So if you need to escape the trade show floor, come across the street over to us and have a conversation that fits inside where our voice needs to be. Again, not to keep us too tight inside the industries that we work in and the people that we work for and stuff, but the goal of putting my logo thing and hanging it very expensively from the ceiling seems like a massive waste of time and energy, and almost 85 to 90% of the time. Undoubtedly, I could just look at a budget and be like, cut all this and just hire more entertaining people immediately, no matter whether that is bad for whoever doing the dryage or whoever's doing the fabrication. Because again, like, yes, I can see your logo, but also if I was interested in your brand, I'm going to find you on the floor anyways. If your brand is doing things that are interesting to me, I'm going to seek you out even more. And if you've already engaged me ahead of time through content, storytelling, outreach, or have created a path for me to have 6 or 7 user validations with you before I show up to your booth's job is still just part of that validation cycle. And that experiential moment is part of you being like, I can go to my boss and say that these are the right people to work with. Or my boss can be like, I saw them, go seek them out and see if you want to work with them because they already work for me. And that relationship between the boss and the -2 or 3 that does the actual work, again, that's a storytelling thing that happens well beyond the floor of the experience, and it needs to happen actively before and after that KPI on site is going to be dramatically reduced.
Yeah, no, I think putting more effort into that pre and post is where people miss out on a very regular basis. And, they think of a trade show or an event. It's like, oh, this is an awareness play. It's like, well, if they're not already aware of you, they're probably not coming to see you in the first place. To your point, it's like your booth is a beacon. Your event is a beacon. They're coming to the event no matter what. It's whether they skip over you and they don't even notice you that it's like, well, now you're missing out. So I love I like the way you put that.
Yeah, and to your other point, right? Like I personally feel that comfort is available everywhere. We don't have to leave our houses. Things can come to us. What experiential can do that other things can't do is literally push you out of your comfort zone and grow. And memories are made when you are out of your comfort zone and you feel like you had a success as an individual. Passion is created when those things happen inside a community that you care about or around a topic that you care about. And again, like I'm talking to people here who are building 5-star hotels that have amazing sheet counts and pillow selections and spas and pools and stuff. And none of that stuff I think matters anymore because it's expected and it's foundational. And if you don't do it well, it's going to detract from the thing. But if you do it well, it's not adding any value, nor is it creating a desire to come back. I think if you do that, plus add in those cultural entertainment things, or the cultural interactions, the social moments, the experiential design, or you literally say, trust me, I'm going to make you uncomfortable now, and you're going to enjoy this on the other side. That happens regularly in experience design. We just don't call it that, right? You go sit down at a chef's table in a 3 Michelin star restaurant, you don't get to choose any of the food. You know what I mean? They chose the food. You're eating the food that they want you to eat, and it's not a question. You're there because you want to try the chef's food and experience new and interesting things. How many more experiences would be how much more value would we get from experiences if we just assumed the experience designer had my best interests at heart and knew that I was there to have a unique and dynamic experience instead of take some pictures in front of a photo booth and get like a water bottle.
Nobody remembers the water bottle, and if I get another water bottle in my house, I'm gonna scream. Which, there's probably gonna be one this weekend because my family's addicted. My wife and my daughter specifically. I don't know how many Awalas we have in this house, but there's at least 5 too many.
But I would also say that that addiction also runs to the idea of we're making sustainability or we're doing wellness, so we're going to have a yoga pop up. You know what I mean? To me, again, that idea is so short sighted. It's so small audience. It's so formulaic that it no longer delivers the value. You're not actually doing anything that is good for the environment if you're just making metal water bottles that people are going to recycle when they get home, right? You've wasted the energy in creating it. You've wasted the time in giving it out. You've lost all that budget, right? And it doesn't really deliver the KPI because now it's the same thing as a tote bag. Everybody has one, so why are we doing it, right? The value proposition, again, in the same way that the same pool and the spa and the sheets and all that stuff is how do you do the thing that's unexpected? How do you take the expected and deliver something bigger than that by understanding what the goal was and the why, and then coming up with a new way of reaching that through your hows and whats.
Goal and the why. That is where, yeah. I was talking to someone recently, and they're like, yeah, I'm a strategist. That is what I do. I basically a fractional strategist. And she's like, the amount of people that have no idea why they're doing the event in the first place is astonishing. She's like, I'm going to say like 80%. I'm like, how do you get budget? It's like, if you're not thinking about that, the why, like, and it obviously it also needs to ladder up to like the corporate objectives, not just like this singular event. It's just crazy to me.
I mean, I would say like we run a workshop for brands, and I'll be self-promotional here because it seems like this is a topic that we both need to do about how to buy better experiences and to design better experiences once you've sponsored something or bought that trade show booth. And it's not about the aesthetics of the booth. It's about saying, I literally don't care what the booth looks like. It's about that strategic why. Why did we do this? Why does this thing happen? And what are we going to do to get the value out of it that you think you're going to get out of it, right? How are you going to create your own podcast, create your own content series, invite people personally, use your LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok channels to drive attention and awareness towards something that you find is valuable to this community inherently? Because I think we started House of Attention with this understanding that humans can communicate in 2 ways, either marketing or entertainment. And marketing says, give me some of your time and I might provide you value. And entertainment says, here's value. If you like this, come back. I've got a ton of it. This is what I care about. You care about it too? Awesome. If you don't care about this, we're not really aligned here. And this is where I'm at. So you now know. And if you do care about this, shit, dude, let's fucking talk all you want because I love this stuff. And if you can't do that, your booth's not going to be valuable. You're just going to be marketing to people and you won't get the validation or the brand endorsement lift, all that stuff. And that kind of workshop is really about understanding that why, what are the tools that are available to us, and how can we approach this very staid environment that is very tightly controlled and create chaos or dynamic energy in it, because that again is going to cause memory making and cause us to feel like the responsible party for that unique thing. And if it can be accretive to our brand voice or message, all that stuff, even better.
Yeah, I think that the give to get mentality is overlooked often. And I think you nailed it with what you were saying about, yeah, marketing is, we want to get you here, but what are we giving you to get you here? And it's like the same, like when people are talking about like, hey, come to booth 706. Why? Like, what problem are you solving? What thing are you giving me? It's like, cool, you're here, like, but there's no, that why is usually missing. It's like, just come. We promise it'll be awesome.
It's gonna be great. We got water bottles, and we're gonna fill them up with our water bubbler.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so my last question, and I think there's a lot of advice that people can take from this pod for sure. But if there is one piece of advice you could give on how to redesign, how people are approaching life experiences, what would it be?
So the one thing that I would say to redesign live experiences, again, is really focus on the audience that you're talking to and give them entertaining gifts immediately that validate you and your purpose for being inside that audience, right? The purview of House of Attention is a triangle, right? We always try to imagine what is the media, the experience, and the artifact that we're creating to allow for that audience to sit inside this House of Attention, right? They've decided to come to an automobile conference. They have a reason to be at this automobile conference because they love cars or because their boss and them sell cars and they need to make sure they know the new cars that are coming out, whatever it is. But if they care about that thing enough, there's going to be media that they're excited about that drives their passion towards our brand and our point in that audience. We're going to push them towards having that ephemeral experience where they can have a more personalized moment, maybe make a memory, or maybe at least connect the energy that they care about deeply because they're a car person with the thing that they're at. And then the goal is to give them an artifact. That artifact is usually, it could be a piece of media, it could be a water bottle if it really was valuable. But the goal of that artifact is to be a key that unlocks their memory of the experience they just had, or allows them to recreate that experience into the future, right? Like if you buy the Nike dunks that are for the Knicks, you can wear them every single day to keep your feet dry and warm, but that's not their value as an artifact. Their value as an artifact is to attach to your fandom. And I think if we start looking at experience design as part of that triangle of validation and as about of entertainment, then you'll start to realize that the experience itself has to be predicated on those other two things as well. And if you're not creating a dynamic experience that drives people to want to make media or have artifacts from it, then you're also not making memories. And your photo booth could be as coolest AI photo booth in the world and make me look like Superman or something like that. It's really not going to be accretive towards your goal, which is validating yourself to a passionate community. And again, if that passionate community is the Doctors Association of America or everybody that goes to IMAX, it doesn't really matter. You really have to figure out why they're there, and see where that overlap is, and then fill it up with the craziest things you possibly can, because that's our choice, that's our ability.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking for that coolest photo booth ever. I don't think it exists, but so no, but I think that's good advice to think about. Again, it's like it's similar to the pre-at post. It's like there are different layers you need to think about for all these experiences, and what you're walking away with and what's going to create that future memory is a really good takeaway. Well, that's all I got for you, Mr. Cirino. I almost said Cirino again. I think your new nickname for me, at least, is going to be Mr. Outrageous Hospitality. I like that comparison to unreasonable hospitality, and it makes sense. House of Attention. You guys are doing really cool things, and everybody should check it out. But hey, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm glad we're getting to know each other better, and we're gonna have to get together in the city one of these days.
I really appreciate it, and I would just say in parting, attention is nothing without action and without that connection, right? So we call ourselves House of Attention because that is the first step in getting people to have that validated experience. But you can't just have spectacle. The spectacle has to be sitting on a foundation of fabulousness, whether it be the food on the plate, the technology and the SaaS platform. You can't just show up and say, we're going to set fire to the table and everybody's going to think it's awesome, or we're going to have these explosions and fireworks show and everybody's going to know what it is. That thing is only great for capturing that tiny window of attention that you have to say, I'm here to give you value and come on this journey with me together. And Jay, it's always fun to talk to you about this kind of stuff because I think we do share a lot of these bits, and I look forward to making some outrageous moments together.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, sir. If you walked away with one thing you'll use, we did our job today. Event Experience Experts drops every week. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and check us out on YouTube if you want to watch. I'm Jay Menashe. See you next time.